Okay, welcome to session 1314, titled The JDC Archives, New Material for Jewish Genealogists. And our speaker today is Linda Levy. Linda is the Director of Global Archives, the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. The JDC Archives is one of the most significant repositories in the world for the study of modern Jewish history and is centered in New York and in Jerusalem. Ms. Levy is a graduate of New York University, and she received her MA from Brandeis University in Contemporary Jewish Studies. She's the editor of the JDC at 100, A Century of Humanitarianism, published in 2019. And in 2014, she served as editor of I Live, Send Help, 100 Years of Jewish History in Images from the JDC Archives. She has published a number of professional articles and has lectured extensively about the JDC Archives and the history of the organization at academic, professional, and Jewish genealogy conferences. And she's a frequent presenter at IAJGS conferences. My name is Hadassah Lipsius, and I'm the session manager for this session. Linda will speak the session will be a total of 1 hour, and Linda will speak for 45 minutes, and then there will be a 15 minutes of questions. And please put your questions in the Q&A section, and you can use the chat for networking, telling us where you come from and enjoying, and I will make sure to make public all the questions for Linda to answer. The session will be recorded and it will be viewable on the on-demand presentation side. And please remember to evaluate this talk through the app. Linda, please.
Welcome. I'm going to be focusing on the archives of the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. And our archives, just so everybody understands, are the records of the organization. Our organization was established in 1914 at the outset of World War I. At that time, many of the people, Jews in America, had relatives behind the war lines and were having difficulty receiving word or providing assistance and help to their family overseas. Those communities were cut off from aid from their traditional places of support, and the joint was established as a coming together of 3 different sectors of the American Jewish community to work together to distribute funds for the relief and help and rescue of people, of Jews in Palestine at the time and in Eastern Europe. Our organization has continued since then, working with the mission of rescue, relief, and rehabilitation of needy Jewish communities overseas. And we also have a non-sectarian relief aspect of the work of the organization. You see here a telegram which we date the beginning of our organization from. It's a telegram from Ambassador Morgenthau, who was then the U.S. ambassador to the Ottoman Empire, writing to his friend Schiff Jacob Schiff in New York, requesting that he raise $50,000 immediately. And Schiff responded with a cable the same day saying basically help is on the way. Our holdings are our text collections, the records of the organization, 3 miles of documents. We have a collection of 100,000 photographs. We have a large oral history collection. Our oral history collection is of the caregivers, the longtime staff members, and the longtime lay leaders of the organization. We have other audio recordings, and we have a large collection of films and videos. We established a website in 2012, and our website includes a lot of interesting information, including topic guides and online exhibits, online stories of various sorts, and blogs. But our database is online for our collections, and we have a names index. We have digitized already of our text collection about I think it's 3.4 million pages. We have also digitized about 78,000 photographs from our photo collection. Those are searchable online. We established on our homepage a names index, which is right on the main page of the website, and one can, through that API, search the large number of lists from within our collection that we have already indexed. Indicated on the other side of this page is a document which is what we call the lists of lists. These are accessible online, and it's the list of the lists that we have indexed already. It is organized chronologically so that there is a description, the name of the list, a description of the list, and access to a PDF of the full list on this document called the Lists of the Lists. I'm going to be giving a few examples of the kinds of lists that we have, and there are many more that will come up in the course of my presentation. Lists relating to Palestine include remittances that were sent from around 1918 or the years slightly after that. What is important for genealogists about our remittance lists is that they include the name and address of the sender as well as the recipient. For many family members, this means that one can find the address in both countries and can also discern in some cases some name changes. Another example of a list related to Palestine is a list of children on the first post-war convoy from France to Palestine in 1945. We have lists of people in Israel, in Palestine at the time, who were providing funding for sending packages to their family and friends who were in Siberia, largely Polish Jews who were in the eastern section of the Soviet Union during the war. Again, their names and addresses here. Other lists of interest include the following. You can see Jewish refugees finding safe haven in Sweden in 1946-47, or a list of German Jews in Lisbon for whom JDC covered emigration costs. From these examples of the lists, you can see that the kinds of records that we have in our archives are typically, they're not civil records, they're not records that you can find somewhere else. They are records that have to do with the work and the assistance provided by our organization, and they are generally records that cannot be accessed in any other repository. Some other lists relating to other parts of the world are these examples in front of us: refugees assisted in Brazil in 1957, or Egyptian Jewish refugees in France receiving aid from the JDC, or a list here that you see from Camp Fadala, which was in Morocco, or JDC aid to Algerian Jews after the earthquake. The JDC has worked in 90 countries around the world, and our archives cover our work in all of these regions, and there are lists in our names index relating to many of them. I want to focus in this presentation on some of our newer developments that should be of interest to Jewish genealogists. The JDC Prague office was very active in the years immediately after the war, and until we were expelled from Czechoslovakia in January of 1950. We were helping many Czech Jews at the time who were seeking to emigrate, and we were also helping Jews from other countries who were coming via Czechoslovakia at the time. We have our records from the Prague office from this period were confiscated from us and are what we call fugitive records, and we have not been able to have access to those records since we were expelled in 1950. Through an arrangement between the relevant Czech office and the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, these records were digitized a number of years ago, and a copy of the digital records was provided in the last year or so to the Joint with the permission of both organizations. There are 11,000 immigration case files in this collection, and they are all labeled as numbers. We have gone through those case files and created a name index, an alphabetical name index of these files, including the family members accompanying the head of household. And that index has been published on our website as of the end of July. We've received requests for case files from family members of over 50 families so far, and this is an important development. People are finding very, very significant information, and I urge you, if your family was in Prague at this time and was helped by the Joint, I urge you to seek those files. Our JDC Paris Immigration Service cards are in the midst of being indexed right now. This is a large collection of 30,000 cards. We've completed more than 50% of them, which are already online. These are records which were shared with us by the Arlson Archives, which the International Tracing Service received our immigration service cards at the time after the war when they opened their operations, and we are now reconnecting with that collection. Also in the works is an index of our transmigrant case files from 1968 to 1989. These relate to Jews from the former Soviet Union, at the time of Jews from the Soviet Union, who decided not to go to Israel and therefore were assisted by the JDC in Vienna and then Rome as they were waiting for processing to come to the United States or other Western countries. Most of these case files are for people coming from the Soviet Union. There are some that relate to other countries in Eastern Europe. We also have digitized and indexed in our collection online the flight lists from the Yemenite Aliyah to Israel from December 1948 until mid-1950. There are about 49,000 people listed on those magic carpet flight lists. And we also have lists relating to Egyptian refugees in 1956 who came to France. We have, here's a couple of samples of what I've just spoken to you about. We have a page from the index of the Czech case files, which you can see right here. You have the client name, additional names in that file, and then the folder number. If you find your family's name and the case number within the file, please, you can contact us and we will provide the file for you. The second card is an example of an index card from the Paris JDC Immigration Service. And here we have an example of the flight list sent with a photo from the Operation Magic Carpet airlift. What is unique about these lists is they're the only list that we have that I know about that includes the weight of the person. Everybody was weighed before they got on the flight because they wanted to be able to fit as many people as possible on the planes. I'm going to begin now to go through a chronological show of some of the lists and some photos accompanying of some of the activities of the organization, beginning with World War I and its aftermath. And we see here a photo of the first shipment of kosher meat to Poland from New York in 1918. We had offices that were situated in New York, to which people who wanted to get aid to their families in Europe during the war and right after the, primarily right after the war, but there's some during the war period as well. People would line up at the JDC offices, and they would provide a remittance, which we would get to their family overseas at no cost. There were no service costs charged. And here's an example of a remittance list. It includes the name and address of the remitter and the name and address of the payee and the amount. These happen to be from New York, but we have remittance lists from many different cities in the United States. We even have some remittance lists that relate to other countries. This is an example of a Landsmannschaft list, where a Landsmannschaft has not only deposited some funds with JDC to get to their town in the old country, but they are telling us who this money should be handed to, who are the leaders that they trust in that community, and who should be receiving this money. We have a large collection of photographs, which I urge genealogists and those who are looking into their family history to please look at. They depict situations in different communities at different times. Many people have recognized people in our photos, and we have a feature to be able to indicate to us whom you've recognized and to let us know who they are and how you know that. This is a kindergarten and a school in Bialystok from 1917 to 1918. Here is a photo of some refugees from Rivne in 21-22. And I do need to talk about this period of time in the early interwar period, where we don't have that many lists that are of genealogical interest. However, we do have many eyewitness reports. I shared an eyewitness report with a friend of mine from Ukraine of the period of time that her grandmother was living in Ukraine. And she said, you know, this record, this eyewitness record, validates all of the stories that I heard in my childhood about why my grandmother was leaving the place that they came from. So this is of great interest to genealogists. We have here a different kind of record. You know, we talk about networking today in our contemporary world, but JDC historically was the ultimate networker. Not only was it receiving remittances from people in the United States to get to their relatives overseas, but we had field people in the shtetls and in the towns and cities overseas who were meeting people who needed help and who were directing us to contact their relatives in America with names and addresses and telling us what the needs were and what that person needed to have sent to them with their relatives. And we have this flip of our remittance lists in our records as well, and you see one example here. We have many eyewitness accounts that are documenting terrible tragedies, such as what we're talking about here in a place that has had a pogrom, and there are the lists of the people and the members of the family and how many members there are, and do they need help? Do they have means of existence? Who was killed by which troops? There's great detail here. A list like this one has not been indexed and not in our names index. It is included in our database of our text collections. And if you do a search within our regular database with the name, you should be able to find lists that your family members might be listed on. Here's another example of some lists. We have a prisoner of war registers. Following World War I, JDC joined with the American Red Cross to help prisoners of war repatriate to their original countries. We have in our collections today a set of index cards like this that have cards that are filled in with handwritten writing together with photographs of the people. This is from our Vladivostok office in the Soviet Union at the time with prisoners of war. We also have handwritten lists, and what we're showing here in this slide is a match between one of these prisoner of war cards with somebody listed on the handwritten lists. Here are some more photos from the interwar period in Rivne, and here is a photo from that period also of a soup kitchen in Zaporozhye, which was Alexandrovsk at the time. We worked closely with the American Relief Administration to be able to get aid into the Soviet Union and to places in particular where Jews were living. Here we have a line outside of a relief office in Jerusalem in the 1920s, and here we have a health clinic in Poland, trying to give you a series of photos which will give you a picture of the extensive work of the organization, and the photos are just symbolic of the many, many documents behind them. We help schools of all ideologies, particularly in Poland, but in many, many different countries. And we have here some not terribly upbeat or happy girls at a Jewish trade school for girls. This is in Poland in 1922. Here is a children's home. This is an orphanage, I believe, in Poland also. This is 1936. And here we have a summer colony in Vilna in 1922. The Beis Yaakov School for Girls, which was initiated in Poland in the 20s, and we have some yeshiva buchers in Warsaw. And now I'd like to move to the World War II period and give you an overview first of the activities of our organization in brief. In Germany, we were providing assistance to the German Jewish community in its efforts to establish schools for children who were no longer allowed to study in public schools, to retrain people who were no longer able to work in their profession, and obviously as Nazism grew in Germany, providing assistance with emigration. In Vilna and in Poland, we had food kitchens. We provided refugee assistance, particularly with those who were moving from smaller places into larger towns, and with emigration as well. In Hungary, we were supporting children's homes, providing welfare support. We were a key funder of the War Refugee Fund. We funded the bulk of the funding for the U.S. War Refugee Fund, including for the work of Raoul Wallenberg in Hungary. In France, we cared for refugees who had moved from other parts of Europe east into France, particularly children who were placed in children's homes or in foster homes, and with we provided assistance to the Jews who were in internment camps in the south of France. In Tangier, we were providing assistance to the European refugees who came to Tangier, which was an international city at the time. We provided housing and some work opportunities and welfare payments. And in Shanghai, we assisted the 18,000 Jewish refugees who were in Shanghai, coming from Austria and Germany, and later from Poland and Lithuania, and I think there were some also from Czechoslovakia and even Hungary, I believe. In World War II, we were providing assistance in the Warsaw Ghetto. This is a photo from our work of refugees lining up for soup kitchen around 1940. Emanuel Ringelblum was an employee of the JDCs. He and his colleagues from JDC from the pre-war period continued during the wartime period to provide whatever assistance they were able to in Poland. In 1941, JDC, with the entry of the United States into the war, JDC was no longer permitted to operate in Poland by US government requirement, but our local staff continued to do whatever they could in the wartime conditions. We have, there is a document that is not showing up here. That's interesting. There are calls for help, and the document that isn't showing up are some Polish Jews from the time of the Warsaw Ghetto, a name of the person in Warsaw and their address, and the name and address of the relative that they were asking the joint to reach out to let them know that these families needed help. There are lists and lists and lists, 25 folders of these lists, and they have been digitized. They've been digitized and they've been indexed. We have long lists of Jewish refugees from Poland who were being helped by the JDC in Vilna. And that's right here. This list here includes over 13,000 names. It includes many of the leaders of the different Zionist movements from Poland. It includes some famous people like Menachem Begin, who was the Prime Minister of Israel. It includes Rabbi Aaron Kotler and other famous rabbis. This has been indexed. I'm going to go back now to another important list, which is a list of refugees who were expelled. These are people who had Polish citizenship who were living in Germany for many years. And in 1939, they were expelled from Germany to the border communities with Poland. And this is a refugee list from Spongin from 1939. The JDC was operating in Japan, in Kobe, Japan, assisting refugees, and we have here a list by yeshiva here. There were many yeshivas who went across Siberia to Kobe, Japan, and then later to Shanghai, and here's a photo and a list. All of our Kobe, Japan lists have been indexed, as well as our Shanghai lists. We have photos and certain lists from Tangier, and we have many, many lists of people who were assisted by JDC for sailings. I want to differentiate a ship manifest from what you will find in our records. Our records are not the manifest of not the official manifest of the ship. They are the people that JDC helped to go on a certain sailing. Here is an example of a passenger list from the Serpa Pinto. This is actually an example of a person. An Israeli diplomat approached JDC and said that his mother, Maria Rosenblatt, had been helped by JDC in Lisbon. And he wanted to know if we had any information about her. and we showed him a case card for her and her parents from our Barcelona case cards, and we also showed him that we had her listed on a passenger list of the Serpa Pinto, and we showed him some of the photos that we have of children who were involved in sailings of the Serpa Pinto, and he identified his mother as the taller girl on this list, Maria Rosenblatt. So what our database is enabling us to do is to match identified material from various kinds of collections of the joint. It could be an index card, it could be a document, it could be a photograph. There are a number of different sources that are useful for family historians. Our records also document the relief that was supplied by the joint during the war and following the war. Here we have a shipment of relief supplies from Palestine via Iraq and Iran. Times have changed, to the Soviet Union. These are probably going primarily to the eastern republics of the Soviet Union to help Polish Jewish refugees. And here we have a list of the people who were recipients of these relief packages to the former Soviet Union. One of my committee members knew that her family had been helped by the JDC and had received packages in one of the Eastern republics of the Soviet Union. She found her family's name on one of the lists with the address, and she did a Google search and saw the building where her family had lived, and the building looked like it was still probably the same building. Here's another photo with supplies being shipped to hospitals. And following the war, we returned to the countries that had expelled us, and we began to try to work to do what we could to provide the relief and the medical care and the assistance that was required in the various countries. We resumed work in Hungary and Poland and Romania and Eastern Europe and other places. We created a tracing service that worked from both angles. We helped the person in Europe who was trying to find word of their families who might have been still in Europe, or their relatives in America who might be able to extend help. And we provided assistance by being one of the organizations that established the Central Location Index in the United States to be able to centralize the search by worried American relatives to know the fate of their relatives overseas in Europe. The organization provided emergency relief for survivors and refugees. We worked to help reestablish a communal structure in the various Jewish communities in Europe. And we were very active in the DP camps in Germany and Austria and in Italy. Here are some survivors on a ship. Here we have a survivor list. Our people overseas were providing information and sending to our New York headquarters and other offices of the JDC lists of people who had survived and information about where they were and what family they had that needed to be contacted. And many of these lists would be read on Israel radio so that people would receive word that their family was alive. In where we had information on the family overseas, our people would try to reach out to them and let them know. This is an example of, I believe, the first DP camp. This is in Salzburg. There's actually a man on the left side who has a baby on his shoulders, and we've identified that baby, who was the first baby born in the Salzburg DP camp. Our organization provided assistance in Cyprus for the detention camps. The British opened detention camps in Cyprus for people who were coming on illegal immigration to Palestine. This is in the post-war period in 1946, 47, 48, and they, rather than allowing ships to disembark in Haifa or other parts of Palestine, they were detouring those ships to Cyprus. JDC had permission from them to offer a full array of services within the detention camps to supplement the meager services provided by the British. We were involved with food and medical care, activities in schools and education, and our Cyprus records are fascinating. We've just created a topic guide on our website about Cyprus that includes reference to photos and artifacts and specific documents. Oh, this system has not taken some of the documents. Once again, these are examples of some of the tracing inquiries and the kinds of information that are available in our archives. I'm surprised that it didn't come in, but we also have an online exhibit which should be of interest to those who were in displaced persons camps, especially children who were born in or lived in displaced persons camps. We received many, many questions from people who grew up right after the war and didn't quite understand how their families made it from certain place to place, who helped them, what was going on. And we created this extensive exhibit with 8 different chapters to be able to give people an understanding of what happened, and it showcases primarily photos, but also some important documents from that period. Here are some photos from other countries after the war. We have repatriated Jews coming in 1946 back from the Eastern republics of the Soviet Union to Poland. You can see in what condition. A children's home or school in Romania, and children being supported in children's homes in France. Here you see a large shipment of packages to Warsaw in the post-war period, and a list of parcels that were being distributed for Warsaw. I mentioned already that in the post-war period, we worked to help communities rebuild following the war, and here is a camp in Romania, a school in Poland, in Klojko, and job training in JDC in Poland. We have new coats in Wrocław, and we have an orphanage in Krakow. And this photo really stuns me every time I see it. This is a child displaying a concentration camp tattoo to his friends. Growing up in America in the years, way after the war, I was familiar with people's Auschwitz tattoos on older people. I don't think I ever saw a tattoo on a child. Our immigration service was very active in many, many different countries around the world. We have lists here of lists of rabbis who were helped. This is yeshiva students in Shanghai. This is also Jewish orphans coming from Warsaw to France. Some of the lists are in handwritten lists, some are typed lists, some are in typed index cards. There's an array of different lists and The collection is very, very broad. Here's some examples of cards. We had established immigration services to help people who were in the DP camps in the Vienna area, in the Munich area, in Warsaw, in Paris, and in many, many other countries around the world, including Sweden, including Italy and various communities in Italy, Lisbon, Barcelona, many, many places. Moving to another part of the world, I wanted to give you a slight picture of some of the activities of the Joint in North Africa. We began our work in North Africa around the time that World War II refugees were in North Africa, and that provided us with a vantage point to understand what was happening in the Mellas in these communities. And we began to provide assistance that focused primarily on children early on with healthcare and with education. And we see here some photos from Libya, Morocco, and Jerba in Tunisia. And now we're back in Lodz in the post-war period in the 50s, the late 50s, when we were again called in after having been expelled by the Polish authorities. And I'm bringing us back to the current period of the beginning of our assistance to the elderly in the Soviet Union in the post-Glasnost period. And our work with Ethiopian Olim to Israel. This is a job training program in the jewelry trade to Ethiopian Jews who came to Israel. This is from the early 1990s. And here we have a Purim party in Riga in 2005. And now I'd like to sort of end with a story that tries to pull together how all of these records can come together in our digitized system. We received a research request from a woman named Daniela from Mexico City in April of 2019. She said that she had found in the USHMM archive a document in which her father applies for emigration from Czechoslovakia to Australia in 1949. They didn't go to Australia, and she wants to know, she learned from that information that the card was an AJDC Paris card, and she wants to understand what happened, why her family didn't go to Australia. We began to look, and we found one of those Paris Emigration Service cards, which showed that her family her parents were being assisted by the Joint and that they intended to go to Australia, and that the card was opened in October of 1949, then we found the case file from our Czech office, these new reconnected fugitive files. We found the case file, and we found a full file of correspondence with their application to the Australian Jewish Welfare Society, pictures of her parents, description of their backgrounds, how they knew English, how they, everything looked like they were probably going to be going to Australia. And the file ends with a note on the cover which says, Welfare Society letter handed over to client, and this was done in September of 1949. And we didn't know what that letter said, but we assumed that it was okaying their going to Australia, approving but why didn't they leave? We wanted to figure that out. And we contacted the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum to see if they had any information, because we knew that they have some files of the Australian Jewish Welfare Society, and those files did not turn up anything. And then we found the answer. The answer was in a press release within the Joint's archives. It was saying that the Prague office was closing, that we were being expelled from the country as of January 1950, and it says that we are less, and it's quoting the Mr. Levi, who directed that office and was hurriedly preparing to leave Prague. He was less optimistic about the emigration possibilities of the 1,000 Czech Jews with landing permits for Australia, visas for Canada, the United States, and other countries, which means that there were people who had visas and landing papers to go to these countries, but the communist system was closing in and the doors were shut and they couldn't leave. And that was the end of the story. The next thing we knew from our records is that we have records that have not yet been indexed of Czech Jews who were assisted by the JDC as they left. These are the students who left in 1968 and were assisted by JDC in Vienna. And we have the card for Daniela Grohl. And 1968 is when she left with her mother. And this helped Daniela through the various documents that we were able to pull together, understand what happened to her family. Some of the lessons from this is that receiving digital copies of our fugitive collections reconnects them with other material that is within our collections, and that allows us to put together a more complete story, and to, in one place, be able to see the various JDC activities that related to a particular family. For genealogists and for family historians, you never know what your research will find in the JDC archives. My final slides are just gonna show you some more features which that we have on our website. We have stories that are curated materials that are arranged by topic, location, and decade. We have galleries for many, many different places in which we worked during the World War II period in particular, where you can see photos of a particular DP camp or a particular children's homes in a particular country. Many people have been able to identify people in those photos. That's the photo galleries that I'm talking about here. The topic guides I mentioned, we have developed to date 5 topic guides. I mentioned the the newest one about Cyprus, but we have a topic guide on the story of the St. Louis, another one on refuge in Shanghai, one on JDC and the U.S. War Refugee Board, and one on JDC and the displaced persons camps. This is very user-friendly, curated material with primary source documents handpicked for the user, along with photos and some film clips and some. Here is some information of how to get to our website, how to get to our database. We have an advanced search function, which is what you should try to use. We're able to do a fuzzy search that will be able to identify approximate spellings of places and names. When one goes into our names index and uses the name search in the full database, you can search that by a number of parameters together. You can look at a ship list together with a surname and a location at the same time in the same search to do a more focused search. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions that there are.
Thank you, Linda. It's always you always learn something new when I listen to your talk, and I could see you impressed the audience too based on the questions. A lot of people were amazed at all the scope of what JDC has in their archives and all the good work that they did. Just for record, for just housekeeping purposes, a lot of people asked about the handout. And so, yes, there is a handout. And when the same place where you went to join webinar, there's a spot there that says handout. It's right above. So you can look and see that handout there. And then I think that was the one question, but we'll see if we get to more. So a number of people asked questions about search parameters. And so they were asking, the other one was the website. The website is listed here, but it's also in the handout too. So that's just a housekeeping questions. A lot of people asked about the search parameters. They wanted to know, and I know that you covered a little bit, but it's probably good to just reinforce it. They wanted to know if you could use SoundX, if you are able to here's one of the questions was from Marion. As I understand it, the names and keywords were entered exactly as they were spelled, making them difficult to find in the index. Are you doing anything to standardize names and spellings to make it easier to search?
Our policy with regard to our database is that we use the names as they appear on the document. We do not change them or standardize them. However, we do have the ability to do a fuzzy search.
So that was the other question. They asked about wildcard, SoundX, phonetic search. And so you're saying that it is available to do.
Yes.
Then another question that Sharon asked, she wanted to know if you can search by town.
Yes, you can search by town. You might find many, many, many documents depending on the town. Meaning, to search by town, you have to go into the database. You don't go into the API, which is on the main page of the website. If you go into the database and go into an advanced search, you can do a search by town or by name or by whatever you like. You can do a search by name and town.
Okay, so I guess this is also, like I said, there are a lot of search questions, and the question was, is there a way to find a surname with a location? So if you can type a surname and the name of the town, will it combine it together?
Yes, in the advanced search in the database.
Okay, so then the next is, do you have the names of those?
If you go to the homepage of our website, archives.jdc.org, at the top you will see a number of categories. One of them is database. You click database and then you go into the advanced search and you can do 2 parameters. You can do 3 parameters if you want.
And so then there are a number of questions relating to the photographs and whether the names of those who have photographed if that's searchable or not, or at least the ones that you have identified.
When we identify people in photographs, we generally don't put them on the public website because we are not 100% sure that those are the people. Those are people that people have told us. We've had 1 or 2 instances where 2 people have identified the same person as a different person. But if you do a search for Linda Levy in the photo collection and someone has identified someone as Linda Levy, that photo will come up.
Okay. So the next question is about remittance lists and if it's indexed both by name of the sender and the recipient.
I should know the answer to this, but I'm not 100% sure. I believe it is both.
Okay. All right.
It certainly is the recipient,
Okay.
but I'm not 100% sure about the sender.
So then I'm sure you'll like this. Some people were asking if you looking for volunteers.
Wait 1 second. Let me just add to that. If we indexed it only with the recipient name in the names index, a search in the full database would show the sender as well. All of our lists that were indexed also appear in the names index, in the general database, with the exception of some of the Immigration Service cards, the index cards. But the lists of names, the regular lists of names, they are all in the database of the text collections.
So Nina wants to know, are there still records that haven't been transcribed, and are there volunteer opportunities for translators who read old handwriting in French, German, and Italian?
We have many records that have not been indexed yet. As I said, we're a little more than halfway through those Paris Immigration Service cards. That's what our current project is right now. We're also working right now on a full list of the passengers on the SS Mogino. That's a ship that brought many people, including Marc Chagall, to the United States, and many children as well. And we just found a film that we did showing all of that, and we're eager to put the full list online so that people who look at the film will be able to also access the list. In terms of volunteer opportunities, my typical answer is a little passé right now, but given the Corona situation, the volunteer work that we have is in New York, and it is typically working with us in our office under supervision. We don't generally give work out to people from a distance, although there are a few exceptions that we have made. Some of this has to do with technical access right now, and the kind of access that is needed that can cause some problems. But if someone is New York based in particular and would like to become involved in some of our indexing projects, they should reach out to us. I assume this Corona situation at some point will end.
So we have about 2.5 minutes left. We have more than one person who has stated that they had a family member who worked for the JDC in the 30s and 40s in different countries. Do you have a list of your employees that are searchable? Is that part of the search database?
There are some things that we have access to that are searchable. Yes, we received many inquiries of this kind. Yes, actually, I won't. I actually recently was in Paris. Before all of this Corona stuff, I was in Paris looking at some old records of joint to see what needed to be saved and sent to the archives, and I found some personnel files of people, I think, from the immediate post-war period in Paris.
And then I have a little about 2 more questions quickly. Somebody said that they recognized one of the cards that you showed on your slides. They recognized the person on your slide, and they wanted to know. It's Chaim Campbell from Ostrovich, so that's a relative of a cousin of theirs. So I think that was
all she
cool.
needs to do to get it is to go to the main page of the JDC website, JDC Archives website, archives.jdc.org, and on the names index, put the name right in the main page. Put the name in, and you should be able to get to the card.
So, and if I can answer in like 30 seconds, the question was about, does a JDC have the other side of the correspondence? Do you only have the one side from the one person from the writing, or you have their response back?
It really depends, because we've digitized our New York headquarters records from 1914 through 1979. 1989, basically. We have digitized our Geneva collections from 1944 to 1964. We've digitized parts of our Jerusalem office. If there's correspondence between our various offices, we have both sides of correspondence.
Okay. So our time is up. I thank you very much for the excellent talk, and everybody have a great day.
Thank you all. And I would just like to shout out a thank you to the wonderful volunteers who have made our names index possible. They began with people from the JDC in New York, and we could not have done what we've done without them.
Thank you.